Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Brokers Open podcast. I am Dr. Ben Spears, the
banana bread of flow.
I'm the banana bread of flow, and I am here with Matt Vi, no nickname. He just happens to be here. Matt, how are you today?
I'm just sitting here being here, Ben. So we'll have to talk about the banana bread for just a second, right?
Yeah, we'll touch on that. But
Yeah.
I want to bring our guest. Of course, on here.
Yeah.
So let's. We have an amazing guest for you guys today. An absolute expert on influence. Everything from he's a speaker to an author, a coach, a consultant. He's the owner of InfluencePEOPLE. Let's bring on Brian Ahearn. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, we had a conversation, before the podcast started about how Matt's wife brought me banana bread, to try and influence me into making Matt work later hours. It may not have been that. I made that up. But, I got tons of banana bread. Matt didn't get any banana bread.
On the banana bread meter, I'm at a 0.
Yeah.
So she made a bunch of them and shared them with a whole bunch of people and everything. And of course, it came up when we were talking to Brian, because the banana bread recipe is a pretty good recipe. And so it came up whenever we were talking to Brian about whether you're influencing intentionally or not intentionally. And then of course the banana bread came up, but I don't want to skip ahead like I just did.
Yeah.
So let's dig into this just a little bit. And Brian, the key thing here is, Frank Agan connected us, right? Frank is such an incredible guy. He is when it comes to being a networker, he is just spot on. He knows how to help people build a business ecosystem, and that's how we met, right?
Yes, and I had the good fortune of living in Columbus, so I know Frank personally. I've known him for about 3 years. One thing that Frank did that was really helpful to me too, when I was writing my first book, I was really far into it, but publishing it, all that stuff that's beyond the writing was kind of out there. And Frank's written a lot of books, and he brought him over to a Panera one day, and he kind of went through the process and demystified it for me. And so I owe him a lot. I feel like he gave me that push I needed to get over the finish line with the first book.
That's truly just what he does with so many people. He's just super helpful with so many people. And so part of why we hit it off when we first started talking was, there's, when it boils right down to it, agents are working with buyers and sellers on a daily basis, on the reg, right? And so we get into the middle of things and we get hustling with what we're doing with business and everything. And if we're not careful, if we're really good at being influential, we might accidentally not be ethical with that, right? And so that's a big part of what Brian helps a lot of people understand. Is his books have helped clear that up for a lot of people. So Brian, can you talk to us a little bit about how to be ethical with maybe explain ethical first, and then talk a little bit about being ethical with persuasion.
Okay, so when it comes to ethics, and I'm thankful that you asked the question, because everybody wants to think that they're ethical, but we know that 10 people could have 10 different versions of ethics. And we want to give people a kind of a checklist that they know they can go back to time and time again and say, I'm doing all these things. I'm good with how I'm interacting with people. So there's 3 keys to being an ethical influencer. The first one is we always tell the truth and we never hide the truth. It's not enough that I'm telling you the truth. An example that I think will resonate with the audience is if I'm selling my home, I live in Columbus, Ohio, I have a basement. There's a crack in the basement, but there's a rug over it because I have a gym downstairs. If either of you were to buy my house, move the rug and see the crack, and if you came back and said, hey, Brian, why didn't you tell me about the crack in the basement? It's indefensible to say you didn't ask. But what I learned through influence is I can bring up shortcomings in my case and actually gain credibility. So if I were to see you, Matt, looking at the house, and I could tell like, man, he looks like he really likes this house. And I say, Matt, before you fall in love with the house anymore, come here. And I bring you downstairs and I show you the gym and I move the rug and I say, look, there's a crack in the basement. I'm not trying to hide anything. You can see I've got a gym here, but I would never want you to buy the house and not know about this. It's never been a problem. It's never leaked. You're thinking, wow, Brian's an honest guy. And I can continue to talk about why it's such a lovely home and let you still fall in love with it. So that's how we deal with things that we might want to hide in the background and hope people don't ask for. Right. No, bring them to the forefront relatively early, gain the credibility, and then move on to the strongest points, the selling points for whatever the home is that you're looking at. The second thing is we only use the psychology that's natural to the situation. So we don't claim, for example, a false scarcity. We don't claim that more people are coming over to look at the house when they aren't really, just to get you to go like, oh, if I don't make a decision right now. We don't claim things like false social proof, like, hundreds of people are looking at this house when that's not really the case. So that really is the borderline of lying, but it's very specific to the psychology that I teach. We only use the psychology that's naturally available when we're having the conversation. And then the final thing that we talk about is whatever we're offering, we know it's going to be good for us as a salesperson. We know we're going to get a commission, but it has to be good for the other person too. And I like to put it this way: good for you, good for me, then we're good to go. If we can hit all three of those, I think we can look ourselves in the mirror and feel good about who we are and how we're interacting with clients.
Yeah, how beneficial, excuse me, how beneficial would that be, Matt, like for an agent to kind of have that mindset,
Oh, man.
when they're talking to buyers, when they're talking to sellers, because too many times, real estate kind of gets a bad rep. They're like, oh, they're just trying to do this, or, they just want their commission check or that kind of thing. Or even asking for a referral, Frank
Right.
says, you're all asking for that 6-inch putt,
Right.
right? That kind of thing. If you've been around so many agents your entire life, from hey, I've never sold a home, or I've never done a transaction, to gosh, I've done billions
Right.
in real estate transactions. Would you say that was a common factor between the agents who didn't succeed extremely well to the ones who are like, man, they're just killing it, that they had that mindset of like, same thing, I'm gonna steal what Brian said because I just love it so much, I'm not gonna tell anybody, I'm gonna tell everybody I came up with it. Yeah, good for me, good for you, we're good to go. Do you see that in real estate, in successful real estate careers?
Yeah, so it makes it so think about so the example that you gave, and it was so spot on, Brian. That's a perfect example about the crack in the floor in the basement. And so think about how much easier it is when you have that type of relationship with people, for them to feel comfortable telling other people to use you in real estate. See, this is the issue that a lot of people run into whenever they're building their business. They want to hurry up and find the transactions, and it's all about leads instead of about closings, and it's all about leads instead of it being about relationships. And so they start hustling through all of this. And in order for them to get the same amount of transactions that they had last year, and then to add more, they have to keep their foot through the floorboard of the floor on the gas pedal to keep going and driving harder, because they're not getting those referrals. That's where a lot of agents don't take that next step in their business, is because they're so focused on hurry up and get this and that right now business, instead of slowing down, taking the time and being sincere about helping people out, and then getting those referrals that come to them. Right. So we've got the Sphere of Influence Challenge coming up. In the Sphere of Influence Challenge, we go over some of the numbers of web lead conversion, right? And then postcards, postcards out to a cold farm, postcards out to a warm farm, and then open house visits, and all of these other different ways. There are great ways that you can get business, but the closest one is 18-to-1 ratio. Right. From people walking into, until you get down to Sphere of Influence referrals. Yeah. Sphere of Influence referrals are 3-to-2, according to the survey that was done by National Association of Realtors. So if you're doing a great job of doing exactly what Brian said, building that rapport, having great conversations with people that are saying, hey, wait a minute, before we go any farther, I see that look in your eye. Looks like you're almost in love here. I got to make sure that you know that this is what's going on. Here is the real deal about what's happening with this. If you still love it, I want to show you other things that are going to take it to that next level. But before we got that far, I really wanted to, this is my listing. I know about this house. I really want to show you that. All that's going to do is make that person feel that much more comfortable and more likely to refer you, which in the long run is going to make it so that you don't have to stomp your foot through the floor every day when you come in. The biggest thing that happens, and I know I'm rambling here, but bear with me for just a second.
Bear with me.
So many people get burnt out in real estate. And the reason why they get burnt out in real estate is because they're not paying attention to the little things that Brian is talking about that make a big difference in the relationship with people. So every day they have to come in and they have to chase that next transaction. They have to chase to go find that next transaction instead of realizing that if you treat people a certain way and if you set certain expectations and if you maintain those relationships, the people that they send you cause you to work not as hard as the people that you ran and chased down and convinced them to work with you. And so, so Brian, I'm going to stop talking at this point, right? So, but I'd love to hear you. I'd love to hear you dig in a little bit on that, and let me know if I'm off base or not. Okay.
So a couple of things stood out. I've never sold a home, but a couple of things stood out. The first is that when you're having that conversation with somebody, we never want to talk about, hey, it's important for me that you get in the right house because I know my reputation is on the line. That has to come second. But so I might say, Matt, this is incredibly important decision that comes up for you. It's important for your happiness, right? You're going to probably be in this home for some period of time, and I want you to be happy. And I recognize that my reputation is on the line also to make that happen. So now I'm kind of second place, but I'm putting it out there like, this is why it's so important. I want you to be happy. And then I have the leg to stand on later when I say, if we do the deal and I have this conversation and I say, Matt, I'm so happy that we were able to help you get into your dream home. And I would like to ask a favor. I know some people will ask you for referrals. That's not what I'm going to ask for right now, but I would like to know, would you be open to talking about referrals, say 6 months down the line after you've settled in the house? If it's everything that you thought it would be, would you be open to talking about referrals? That's a very non-committal way, but still people in a sense are committing. If they say, well, yeah, I'd be open. Now it's up to me to go diary my system. And then I come back in 6 months and I make the phone call. Hey, Matt, how are things going? Do you love the house? Is everything good? Do you remember when we had that conversation before? Would you be open to talking about referrals? And I would even take this one step further. And I know people might think, well, that's a lot of work. If I ask you for referrals right then and there, you're scrambling. Mm-hmm. But if I say, Matt, could we find a time next week, maybe Tuesday at 2:30 to have a short conversation, because that's the lifeblood of my business. You came to me through Frank, right? So I refer back to how that happened. But now you're starting to think, who can I refer to Brian? And I reinforce that by, just the quick note that says, looking forward to talking to you next Tuesday. I might even shoot you a text Tuesday morning. So you're like, oh yeah, I got to think of referrals. But what I'm doing is mentally preparing you to give me something that will benefit me, but it also helps you because it's reciprocity. I got you in the house of your dreams. You're happy. You want to give back. That's how we tap into the psychology in a way that's a win for both people. If I get those referrals, I'm happy. You're in the house of your dreams. You're happy. Both of us are enjoying life.
Yeah, and you've set it up and I love that, Brian. That's fantastic. And you've set it up in a way that allows them to not have to make that split-second decision. Right.
Yes.
So instead of saying, hey, do you have any referrals for me? Right. You're saying, hey, we promised we would talk about this. One of the things that I coach people to say, which is right along this line. So I love hearing you say this is, I could never retire off of one transaction. One, because that you don't make enough money doing that. And two, because I love doing what I'm doing so much. Mm-hmm. If I do a great job for you, are you willing for us to talk, and maybe you allow me to help some of your friends and family if I can do a fantastic job? So now you're basically saying the pressure is on me to do a great job because I want to earn the right for you to be able to do that later. The other thing that's doing is that is pre-framing them for, hey, if this goes really well, we're going to talk later. And those people are the ones that, and so people that leverage that, and especially if they leveraged it early in the transaction, when things were going smooth, they were getting referrals during the transaction from people because it was going the way that it was supposed to be going. And and so putting that obligation out there, right? I mean, that's part of it. I'm saying, hey, I have to do a great job here, because if I do a great job, and if you're comfortable with it, I'd love for us to have that relationship together where you feel comfortable referring. I think it's so cool that you said, how about if we talk about this 6 months from now? Or how about if we talk about it 30 or 45 days from now, or whenever that is, because that does give them that chance to step away from the pressure of everything that's going on and take a look around and see if there's someone that's a great, a great fit for that. And I'll just say right now, if anybody's listening to the podcast and you didn't pause the podcast and write down what he just said, you need to pause the podcast. write down what he said, implement it into what you're doing, because that's going to make you tens of thousands of dollars right there.
Yeah.
No,
Period.
completely agree.
There's a whole psychology that we talk about. We talk about influence, but then we also talk about what's called persuasion, play on the word.
Yep.
But what do we do before we even attempt to influence somebody's thinking or actions? And it's, you said pre-frame, but you're kind of laying that groundwork so that when you come to that ask, they're much more likely to say yes. It's not just out of the blue, but they remember that they said they were open to the conversation. You've asked them things about, are they enjoying the house? Yes, they are. And now they're starting to remember, yeah, he said, if we enjoyed the house, would we be open to this? All of this raises it to the top to make it easier for that person to say yes to the conversation you'd like to have. And then you give them a little space to think about who it is that they would want to refer. I think it's a bad idea anytime a salesperson asks for referrals at the close of a sale, because when you've dropped tens of thousands of dollars on a car, or you've dropped hundreds of thousands or more on a home, you're not concerned with helping that other person. You're thinking, have I made the right choice? This is a lot of money. I'm tired. This has been a long process.
Right.
People are not mentally in the right space to help you in a way that they would if they were in a better space.
Yeah, completely agree. That's a fantastic point. And making sure that they understand that at that moment, it's not about you getting referrals.
Right.
At that moment, it is really about them. That's the culmination of what you guys worked together on, that you were supposed to be, as the real estate professional, you were supposed to be helping them get to that point. So
Right.
if that is the only time that you can see that you're going to bring up whether they're going to refer or not, then maybe they haven't been pre-framed for that conversation. And maybe the obligation wasn't on you to, maybe you didn't take that obligation on yourself to make sure that you went to that other level. Because the truth is, if you crush it and you do a fantastic job and you never ask for the referral, never say anything about it, but you really do a fantastic job, you're really taking advantage of every opportunity to go over and above for them, they're going to refer you. That's just the way it's going to work. If you're putting them first, that's absolutely what's going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean don't ask, but of course, that means, do it the right way and have a plan of how you're going to do it. Don't just sit at the table when it's their moment and say, can you do something for me? Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I have a question, right? So I am, I'm one of those guys, like I like an order to things. Right. I'm not a multitasker by any stretch of the imagination. I like to start on something and finish it. And like, what else do I need to work on? No, I'm not going to work on. Matt works on a million things at the same time.
Right. And they all get done like this. Right. Ben is like this. Ben is like tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, but the key is either way, they all get done.
That's right.
And so, I want to talk to you a little bit about this. I know, if we were talking earlier, you're like, man, I love systems and that kind of thing. And I'm right there with you. I love a great system. Is there, I'm a chiropractor, and they used to say it's a combination of an art and a science. And I feel like influence is probably, the same thing. Is there an order? If I said, listen, I'm analytical, right? I just don't get I don't even like talking to Matt, right? Is there an order if I wanted to talk to Matt and influence him, an order of things I need to go through? Like, do I need to say, Matt, I really like your shirt. I do like your shirt. So I'm being honest and ethical,
Right.
But is there an order to influence, or is it just like, no, like you just gotta be in it?
So there are a lot of ways to use these 7 principles of persuasion that we talk about. In my book, Persuasive Selling, I talk about which principles are most effective at each step in the sales cycle, from prospecting all the way to referrals. That's one way. Another way is looking at different personality styles, and there are certain principles that are more effective with different personality styles. But on an overarching basis, you could say this, looking at, what do I need to do? Do I need to build a relationship? Do I need to help this person overcome some uncertainty to have confidence, or do I just need to motivate them to action? So if you were moving into a meeting somebody for the first time, you're going to want to focus on building relationship. You're going to want to tap into, for example, the principle of liking, principle of unity, and reciprocity. Those are relationship builders. Now, you might say, well, I've got a pretty good relationship with this person already. I'm certainly going to be polite and say, I like the shirt and things, but I don't need to focus on, building more and more relationship. What I need to do is give them confidence that what I'm saying is probably going to be in their best interest. That's where you tap into the principle of authority. People want to follow the lead of experts, or social proof. People want to know, well, what are others like them doing? If they're doing it, it's probably good for me too. And the final thing is, you may have people who they know you and like you. They're not unsure what to do. They're just dragging their feet. How can we motivate their action? There's a couple of principles that are especially good for that. Principle of consistency. If we can get people to verbalize or commit what it is that they're looking for, they're more likely to say yes to that if we show them that we're doing it. And the principle of scarcity. What's the downside if they don't take action? What are they going to lose? And what people make a mistake a lot of times is they talk about all the positives and all the benefits when they should really reframe those and saying, Ben, I get where you're coming from, and I know that you want to make this decision. But here's what you lose if you choose to go with somebody else. Fine brokers, other places, but we're the only one that does these particular things. And I think that matters a lot to you. But I reframed it so that it sounds like you're giving up something, and that might be the thing that motivates you to make the decision. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely love that. And with every podcast, we always like to be respectful of all of our guests' time, and same thing with our listeners. Listeners, if you're out there, I'm looking at the microphone because that's you to me.
Right. And it makes sense if it's a podcast, but if you were on YouTube,
hit that red subscribe button.
You can't go like this.
Hit that red subscribe button. Okay. So I just love that, and I love how. When you're talking to someone and they're just an expert at something, that's my favorite thing about the podcast, right? I always, come in, I have my list of questions that I think I'm going to ask. And then I listen and I'm like, yeah, I want to ask this one thing that's a little bit off, so I can pick their brain just a little bit more and hopefully make myself a little bit smarter as well. But I'm gonna get to how everybody gets in contact with you and that kind of thing. You talked about personalities for a second there, and I want to touch on that just for a second. Going back to our banana bread conversation earlier, I stepped on my banana bread meter that you made up, and I'm up like 5 points this morning. So that's for my personalities, down the drain right now. But as far as personalities go, we talk all the time about how there's 4 different ones. I know that, you have kind of a model yourself that you use. I'd love to talk, about if I'm an agent, I'm talking to buyers and sellers, if you've done a lot of listing appointments or a lot of buyers appointments, you've probably learned people are a little bit different. Talk a little bit about personality and how that plays into a role of influence, and then I'll make sure that we let everybody know how to get in touch with you.
Okay, so in my book, Persuasive Selling, I outline a model that I call DEAL. So it's a 4-quadrant model. DEAL stands for driver, expressive, amiable, logical. And each of those has particular principles of influence that are more effective. If you go with a driver who is a task-oriented, wants to be in control person, Donald Trump was the off-the-charts driver. And then you look at an amiable who is more about self-control and relationship-oriented. One that comes up a lot in workshops is Mother Teresa. You could be trying to influence both of those people to do the same thing, but you will go about it very, very differently. Yeah. Different psychology will motivate them. And so it's important that you understand that. From a self perspective, it's important that you understand who you are, because you do need to adapt, but you also want to know what your strengths are. And as I have mentioned to you guys before, I would fall in the logical. Even though I do public appearances and things, I'm not by nature an expressive individual. I'm a logical. But in having to sell myself and my business, I've figured out systems. And so I've got great systems for follow-up. Once I get somebody in the system, they are going to hear from me. I call it patient persistence. And as long as I've got permission from them to continue to reach out, it may take years for them to finally say, now's the right time. That's okay. But I will not lose an opportunity because I wasn't top of mind. That's my strength.
Love it.
So I learned to play to the strengths and I minimize the weaknesses. And I have found that if anybody in whatever quadrant they are, if they learn how to do that, they can be successful as long as they're also motivated for the job.
Yeah, patient persistence should be like a t-shirt that everybody in real
Absolutely.
estate gets.
I hear you.
Like the day they get your license, here's your license and here's your t-shirt. Make sure
Right.
you look at your t-shirt
And on the
more than
back-
your license.
Yeah. And on the back, it should say, shh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I know I'm super grateful for you coming on
Absolutely.
and sharing, your wealth of knowledge with us. I want to make sure that, all of our listeners get an opportunity to connect with you and learn a little bit more about you. Guys, if out there in podcast land, no matter what he says, I'm going to put it in the description below. So you'll have links to, all these different, goodies that he's going to talk about.
All right. Well, I would say first and foremost, connect with me on LinkedIn because I put out a lot of content. If this interests you, you'll be able to see a lot of information and continue your learning. If you don't tell me that you heard me on the podcast, it's a guarantee that I will respond back to you to say, how did you find me? I like to know where the traffic is coming from, but it also gives us an opportunity to have a little interaction. And I found that people really appreciate that. It puts social back into social media. Even if you tell me where you found me, I'm still going to reply personally. So everybody gets personal and we'll have a little bit of back and forth. The other way to find me is my website, which is InfluencePEOPLE.biz. Out there, I've been a guest on nearly 150 podcasts. There's videos. There's a blog. I've been blogging weekly for more than 14 years. Tremendous amount of free information there as well.
Gotcha. Absolutely love it. Well, guys, do yourself a favor and go right now and connect with him on LinkedIn. Just a super guy and a great resource for each one of you to have in your network. Matt?
Yeah, man.
I'm going to close it out unless you got anything else to add.
I could talk to him all day. I could talk to Brian all day. It's the information and everything is just so helpful from an agent standpoint. What he just got done talking about. I mean, this should be something that helps a ton of people do a lot more business. More importantly, it's easier to do business if they just really lean into what he's talking about. So they don't have to work as hard to make more money. How can you argue with that?
Yeah, it's a winning recipe. Guys, reach out to him, grab all of his content, read all of his books, and thank us when you're done. Wherever you're listening to this, whether it be iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, any of those platforms, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hey, how's it going? Hit that red subscribe button, that bell right beside it. You get notified every time we drop a new episode. Go to brokersopenpodcast.com, sign up for our monthly newsletter. We'll send you really cool stuff on how to grow your real estate business. In between listening into these podcasts, Matt, Brokers Open Podcast, it is not just about open houses.
It's about open minds. Thanks, guys.